Okay, what we're going to do is look at our Punnett square introduction assignment, and we actually started this yesterday, but I am going to review this quickly, and then we'll look at problems 6 through 11, which you had for homework, and then we will do the remaining 3 problems. So just quickly remember, the idea of a Punnett square is to take 2 parents and look at their genotypes, and then predict the possibilities of the genotypes of the offspring from the 2 parents. So our example yesterday, we were looking at the gene for height, and our alleles were tall, which was dominant, and dwarf, or short, which was recessive. And so we had 2 plants, and they were both hybrids. They both had dominant allele, capital T, and a recessive allele, lowercase t. And so we set up the Punnett square with 1 parent above and 1 parent on the left side of the Punnett square, and then we just combine the alleles, and you should have this Punnett square filled in from yesterday. And after we fill in the box, we answer the questions 1 through 5. And so the genotypes of the parents, they were both hybrids. The phenotypes meant that they were both tall, because if they each have the dominant allele, which is T, or tall, then the phenotype will always be tall. Then looking at the offsprings, what are the possibilities? So the possibilities of the offsprings could have been actually all 3. They could have been purebred dominant, hybrid, or purebred recessive. And then what were the possible phenotypes? They could have been tall or short. And then the ratio we looked at was that 3/4 or 75% of the offspring, or the chances of the offspring being tall, were 3/4 or 75%, and then the chances of the offspring being short would have been 1/4 or 25%. All right. So now let's look at your homework. And what you had to do for your homework is you first had to identify the genotypes of the parents, and then fill in the Punnett square. So that went a little fast, but first thing I want to do is read the statement. And so brown hair is dominant over white hair for guinea pigs, and we are crossing a hybrid guinea pig with a purebred recessive guinea pig. And then they want you to be sure to list both the genotypes and the phenotypes in the Punnett square. So crossing a hybrid guinea pig means that we have a capital B, I'm using B's, capital B, and a lowercase b, and a purebred recessive. Purebred means the same, and recessive would mean 2 lowercase b's. So that means I'm crossing a hybrid with a purebred recessive. And when we fill in the boxes, alright, our Punnett square looks something like this. And excuse me, if we were to fill in the phenotypes, because we did fill in the genotypes, this would be brown, this would be white, these would be brown, and this would be white. And so then answering the questions, what ratio of guinea pigs would have brown hair? And that would be 2 out of 4, and the ratio for the white hair would be also 2 out of 4. Alright, number 7. So again, if I read it, it says cross a purebred dominant yellow cat with a purebred black cat. Yellow fur is dominant over black fur. So here we're using the letter Y, and we have to make sure when we use capital and lowercase letters that are the same, that we are really obnoxious about the size, so that I can tell the difference when I grade assignments. But we have a purebred dominant yellow cat, so purebred means the same, dominant is going to be 2 capital Y's. So I'm going to write that over the statement. And then we have a purebred black cat, and black would be recessive, so it'll be 2 lowercase y's. And so I set up, I have purebred dominant, and I'm crossing it with a purebred recessive. And so my Punnett square will look like this. And all of the offspring will actually be hybrids, capital Y and lowercase y. And so the percentage of the offspring that would have yellow hair would actually be 100%, and the percent chance, the percent chance that they would have black hair would be 0%. And this is just like Mendel's first experiment with the pea plants. All right, moving on to number 8. Okay, cross a purebred recessive cat with a hybrid cat. Curly hair, which I've never seen a curly haired cat, but curly hair is dominant over straight hair. Alright, so we have a purebred recessive cat and a hybrid cat. So purebred recessive, and we'll use the letter C. Purebred recessive would be 2 lowercase c's, and a hybrid would be capital C lowercase c. So we have purebred recessive crossing with a hybrid, and our Punnett square should look something like this. Now, it doesn't matter, really, which genotype you put on the top or on the side. You can switch them. You're still going to get the same outcomes inside. They'll just be in a different order inside the boxes, but it'll still come out the same. So how many of the cats will have curly hair? The chances of having curly hair would also be 2 out of 4, and then straight hair would also be 2 out of 4. Keep moving ahead. But that was very similar to a problem earlier. Alright, now let's look at number 9. And in number 9, you are asked to cross a purebred dominant brown rabbit with a purebred recessive white rabbit. Brown fur color is dominant over white fur. And so brown being the dominant color, and if it's a purebred dominant, that means I'm going to have 2 capital B's. And if it's a purebred recessive, I'll have 2 lowercase b's. Alright, you'll start to notice that these Punnett squares, there's only so many ways to do them, and they start to look all similar. So if we have 2 purebreds, 1 dominant, 1 recessive, that means all of the offspring will be hybrid. And how many will have brown hair? 4 out of 4, and 0 out of 4 would have white. So then in your homework, and I apologize, number 10, it says to cross 2 of the offspring from question 2 above. This is an old worksheet, and I just forgot to change that number. It actually should be from number 9 above. But all we're doing is just taking 2 of the offspring and crossing them. And again, this is just like Mendel's pea plant experiment. So if we take 2 hybrids and we cross them, we'll end up with a Punnett square looking like that. And the probability of the offspring having brown hair would be 75%, and the probability of having white hair would be 25%. Alright, number 11. Alright, green pea pods are dominant over yellow pea pods. We want to cross a purebred yellow pea plant with a hybrid green pea plant. So purebred yellow, excuse me, that's recessive. So we're going to use 2 lowercase g's, and then a hybrid would have a capital G and a lowercase g. Now, for your homework, you can really use whatever letter you want. I try to use letters that are similar to the statement. So in this case, green pea pods are dominant, so I used a G. But if you use something different, it's fine. I just think it's easier if you use a similar letter to the trait, the dominant trait. But going back, here's our cross. We have purebred recessive on the top of the Punnett square, a hybrid on the side, and you see the Punnett squares filled out. And we'll end up with the chances, or the percentages, that the offspring would be green would be 50%, which means 50% would be yellow. Alright, number 12. Okay, this one is a little tricky. Now, some of you may have gone on from homework last night, others of you may not have, and actually block B, you need this worksheet. So if you don't have the worksheet, please pause the video and we'll pass those out, and then we'll get started. Alright, so non-red hair is dominant over red hair, and we want to cross 2 parents that both have red hair. So this is very similar to real life. Right? Most people don't have red hair, and so anything non-red, brown or black or even blonde, would be considered dominant, where red hair is recessive. And so we have 2 parents that both have red hair. And so in order to have red hair, that means both parents must have both recessive red hair alleles. So it would look something like this, where they both have, and I'm using R's, they both have 2 lowercase r's. And so if we cross 2 parents, both with red hair, their kids are both going to have red hair. Alright, and so what are the genotypes of the offspring? There would be 2 lowercase r's, and then the phenotypes would obviously be red hair. Okay. Number 13. A hybrid black horse crosses with a purebred white horse. Black is the dominant color. Again, they want us to show the cross. So if black is dominant and we have a hybrid black horse, that means we have I'm using B's, capital B and lowercase b. And for our purebred white horse, that would be purebred recessive, it would be 2 lowercase b's. So here's the 2 parents and our Punnett square. Alright, and if we were to answer the questions, how many of the offspring would be black? We have 2 out of 4. And how many would be white would be 2 out of 4, and they both would be 50%. Alright, if you have any questions, I know the video is going fast. You can always watch it tonight. It's up on my science page, and then I will be in school tomorrow, and we'll definitely talk about this more. Alright, but let's take a look at number 14. Number 14 says that tall pea plants can be hybrid or purebred. Right, if you were hybrid or purebred, sorry. And so if you were given a tall pea plant, explain how you could determine if it was a hybrid or a purebred. And then it says you may want to draw a drawing in a Punnett square. So this kind of goes back to Mendel's experiment. All right, someone gives us a tall pea plant, and we want to know, is it a hybrid pea plant or is it a purebred? And so if it's tall, whoops, didn't mean to do any of that. All right. If it's tall, that means it's either dominant, purebred, or it's a hybrid. And so we want to know if it's a hybrid. So what we would do is we would cross it with a short plant or a dwarf. And by doing that, if we look at the Punnett square, if the plant is a hybrid, then if we crossed it with the short plant, then we would have a 50% chance that we would have a short offspring. Alright, so if we crossed it, I don't know, 50 times or even 100 times, that means we would get about 50 offspring, or 25 offspring if we only did it 50 times. That would be short. If we crossed it with a short and we never ever got one in the offspring, that means that the plant was a purebred dominant. That means it had 2 capital T's, because no matter what, if we crossed a purebred dominant with a purebred recessive, then we would always get hybrids, and that goes right back to Mendel's experiment. Alright, so what you're going to do now is you're going to receive a SpongeBob worksheet, Bikini Bottoms Genetics. And what you're going to do is you are going to work for the next 15 minutes or so, and you can work with a partner at your table on the worksheet. And then after about 15 minutes, we're actually going to play the video, and I will review all the answers. Alright, and we'll see how you did. So the only thing I want you to do, and we can pause the video, but when you get the worksheet, there is one thing that might be a little bit confusing. Alright, and if we look at the directions for number 1, alright, again, pause the video until everybody has the worksheet. But once we get the worksheets, if we read number 1, it says, for each genotype below, indicate whether it is heterozygous or homozygous. Alright, now heterozygous means the same thing as hybrid. So what I'd like everybody to do is on your worksheet, right above heterozygous, write hybrid. Right, that's all it means. The prefix hetero means different. And so we know hybrids have different alleles, one of each. And so then homozygous is just the opposite. Homozygous stands for purebred. Okay, the prefix homo means the same. Alright, so the rest of this worksheet, you're going to see the 2 terms, heterozygous and homozygous, used a lot. And just remember that heterozygous means hybrid and homozygous means purebred. So take some time and complete both sides of the worksheet. If you finish before the rest of the class, you can actually read your silent reading book.